What's good, guys? Welcome back to another podcast episode. We are in episode 12 today. I'm Anthony. I'm joined here by co-host Joshy and David Herring. It's the Good Life, your practical guide to adulting, and we are going to be talking about a very practical subject today, that being finances.
Finances. This is gonna
Wow.
be episode 1 of 2.
Part one.
Part 1. We'll get into a little bit about what part 2 is gonna be a little bit later. But before we get into that, I just have a little bit of an anecdote to share on the topic of finances. Finances have not always been the most exciting topic for me personally. But I do think over the years, like my perspective and mindset about it has changed, particularly when it comes to debt. And so when I was in early college, I was probably in the worst amount of personal debt that I've ever been in before. I'm not going to give an exact number, but let's just say it was not great. And during that time, I found myself really struggling. There's this concept that they talk about, a lot of financial auditors on YouTube and whatever they talk
Caleb
about,
Hammer.
like Caleb Hammer, plug for Caleb Hammer. You know who Caleb
No,
Hammer
I
is?
do
No,
not.
that's like, I'll show you later.
Okay.
But you know, he talks about this. He relates the idea of being in debt like drowning, right? Like, or not, and even so much to the sense that you can't even breathe. Like you're so far in debt that you can't breathe financially, right? Like
Yeah.
every single spare penny is being thrown at this mountain of debt. And there was a season of time that I felt like that, and it was this weird combination of chaos and trying to find joy and always feeling like everything's in chaos, and I could never feel stable. And so just kind of getting into this episode, what is your guys' thoughts about debt and like the idea of being in debt and the struggles of being in debt, and maybe I would even argue the joys of being in debt and getting out of debt, if that's even something that we can even begin to kind of recollect together.
That's great. I think tackling it from being a recent graduate, I think there is, that certain amount of debt that you take on, unless you are flawless with the way that you approached spending money to go to college, because college is very expensive, I'll say. But I think my view on debt is, if you're setting yourself up for a successful future, I think the way that you can approach how you're using your money and spending it, whether that is just for essential things like food and, rent, etc. I think that really depends, because if you're really smart, you can take debt and have it work for you, or you can allow debt to take over your life and you work for it.
Ooh.
So I think that's just my take personally from it. But I am saying this because graduating recently from college allowed me to recognize, like, I really did my best, and I think I did a fantastic job at the amount of money dealing and taking care of my finances, paying for college. Because graduating with debt, but not a heavy weight of a burden of debt, it feels fantastic. And that was all through, of course, working as many jobs as I could, obtaining as much scholarships as I could, and reaching out and creating those opportunities so that debt didn't feel as much as a heavy burden.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. I think my relationship with debt was, or just money, I think in general, to even be a little more broad, is definitely has changed. I think it started with this idea of understanding that we need money to do things, and I understood that from a very young age. As a kid, I wanted toys. I wanted, tech. I wanted, the next like iPhone. I remember growing up, kind of a side story. My parents didn't want to buy me a phone really until I was in middle school. So I didn't get my first phone until middle school. And even then, I think all the cool kids had like iPhones. I started with a very humbling like Android. So I was like a green text guy.
You were the cool kid.
For very,
green
very
text.
uncool, actually, in society. An outcast, I will say.
Oh man.
But yeah, I was the green alien guy, and part of that though
Green
was
alien guy.
understanding that like you needed money to be cool, right? That was the association I made, because if you had money, you could buy an iPhone, which gave you cool points in school, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so like in a way, I understood that, and I remember the first thing I saved for as a kid was an iPod Touch, because it wasn't as expensive as a phone. It was $200. I remember because I paid cash and I paid a friend to actually get it for me. Because at the time I didn't have a car, I didn't have transportation, I didn't even know what it meant to really go to the store and buy something. I just knew like I needed money and I would exchange that. And so my friend knew how to do it, and so I gave it to him or her, and then she did the thing, and I like the next day I had an iPod Touch in my hands.
Yeah.
You're like,
And I was like, this is so cool. I can trade whatever this paper thing is for whatever I want. And that was the beginning of a relationship with money, I would say, which has changed and which we'll talk about, I think, in this episode, but also was an introduction to the idea that, like, also why in our world today does this object that we call money so important, and why is it also attached to my happiness in such a close, seemingly way, and how did that already make sense at such a young age?
yeah. No, and I think that leads really, really well kind of into some of the research I did, right? Talking about this relationship between money and happiness. And like kind of to your point, it's like we're kind of having this question of why does it have such substantial influence over our happiness? And it's like you could argue that could be because of influencers, that could be because of sort of the portrayal that people who have a lot of money have, and there's this sort of narrative of happiness being associated with increased amounts of money. But interestingly, right, there's one of these studies. It was a global study actually done for 1.7 million people, found that people who make between $60,000 to $75,000 have an adequate amount of perceived happiness, right? And even as an extension of that, as you get above $75,000, like as your income increases, the rate by which you get more happy, it decreases.
So it plateaus.
So until you get to, I think it said $200,000 is when you plateau, where any money above that doesn't increase your happiness at all.
So we should all aim to make 200,000.
So we
To
should
max out on happiness.
That's the
max
goal.
out $200,000 easily every time. But yeah, what are your guys' thoughts on that? Like, just based on, where you are maybe currently financially, or maybe where you thought that in your own mind, oh, if only I make this much money, I'll be there. I'll be happy where I want to be.
So genuine question to rephrase that and pose to both of you guys.
Yeah.
I think a fun question to ask is also, like, how much money do you think you have to make to be happy?
Oh,
And that could be, you can answer that from a personal place. You can answer that from the experience of seeing your parents make an X amount and them having a certain happiness level, or what you've seen in friends that make more than you or less than you. I'm just curious to hear what you guys think about that.
Wow, man, are you asking for a specific number?
Interpret it as you will.
Okay, I will say there is no specific number, but as an understanding of means to this question, if I'm able to have everything that fulfills my social relationships and my basic needs like food and a roof over my head, I'm personally chilling.
So let me ask you, do you budget?
Budget specific in certain things, yes.
So do you know how much you spend a month?
Entirely?
Yes.
Okay, I'm not going to give you that amount.
Roughly. Okay.
But generally, there's an idea of that number. But what's the purpose in asking?
I'm just wondering because
Yeah.
So for me, like I would say my expenses tend to be pretty low, including like housing and everything.
Right.
And we'll get into more, I think, like technical stuff.
Yeah.
Next episode
yeah.
in part 2.
Part 2.
But I spend around, like, this is including rent, like around $2,500, like transparently.
Mm-hmm.
And so that comes out to about $5,000 every 2 months, so $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
So you're saying if you were in my shoes, $30,000 a year would cut it for you? That's what I'm asking.
If I were in your shoes,
Yes.
vaguely, I'll say yes. But I think it's more because what I'm answering to is what's so important about that journey. And when we're focusing on finances, I think so many people are very fixated on the idea of the financial concern of what can supply me as far as money can go. But there's certain things that money cannot buy. And that's where I'm finding so much more fulfillment and a joy from. And, there are certain things like you can't really buy a best friend relationship.
Right.
You can't really buy a marriage. You can't really buy a family. And even though you could, if you had all the money in the world, where's the sense of intentionality and love and joy that comes from the creation, from the down up, from the humble beginnings of that process? So I think that's my approach. Like in your circumstance, as far as what your situation goes, maybe 30K and then some extra 5K on the side for all the extra splurging of, accessories and camping gear and, things that I love to do as far as hobbies go.
Right.
Right. But if we wanted to be realistic of other things, I mean, yeah, sure. More money would be always nice, but I'm not so focused on that.
Okay, so I guess what I'm hearing also is like you need a bare minimum coverage, right, for your basic needs.
Right.
But then also it's nice to have a little extra.
Yeah.
To spend on things you care about as well.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's fair. I think. What do you think, Josh?
No. I mean, it's really an interesting idea that like another concept, the research, and we kind of talked a little bit about this before the episode was, and I actually didn't know how to describe it, but that kind of the idea of like you make 30,000 or whatever. It's like if you increase your finances, there's this idea that people who are even satisfied, like let's say we just threw that number of like 50K, like just as a number to be like that's what you made, and like you were satisfied with that because it met the needs that you're talking about.
Right.
I think culture tends to influence us and say that no, you still need to make more. And even with that metric before, right, of like the 75,000, and that rate of happiness decreases over time. Like there's still this idea that we still need to keep making more, even if with our current income we're satisfied as we should be.
Right.
There's this really interesting idea that's talked about in the several like financial auditor series that I follow. Do you know what a financial auditor is in concept? So basically, it's someone who will sit down, not to purely just audit through someone's finances to be like, let's look at a practical standpoint, the direction that your spending habits and your budgeting is going to take you, for better or for worse. And if it's for worse, then what do we need to do to point it in a better direction? And if it's better, how can we make it even better than it already is? That's in theory what happens, right? But one of the interesting things that they've talked about is this idea of income inflation causes spending inflation.
Oh yeah,
right? Where
that's a good concept.
you make more money, but you actually are more inclined to spend more. And so, and that kind of goes into this, right? It's like where, yeah, you're making 50,000, you get a pay increase, you get a raise, you get a promotion, right? All of a sudden your income's 75,000, right? But then you're like, wait, I have an extra 500, 600 coming in a month or every paycheck. I want to spend it on this extra rock climbing gear, or I want to spend it on this thing. And all of a sudden you find that you're making $600 more, but your outgoing is more, and you're breaking even. You're still bringing in as much as you were before. You're like, why am I not making more? But because your spending has increased, right? So just want to kind of pose this idea, right? About like, we're talking about with you, I think that's a wonderful mindset where it's like, what is the bare minimum that I need? And I would even rephrase it better to be in relationship with in the depth and in the realness that God calls us to be in relationship with people, right?
Right.
And it's like, that's why I admire missionaries a lot, right? Because they live in full faith that God's going to provide.
Absolutely.
Right? But with the full and complete desire to serve the Lord. Right. And that finances will be taken care of, right? I have a friend, and I'll prompt this to you guys afterwards, named, I have a friend from high school whose parents were missionaries. And growing up, finances were always a really interesting topic because it was one hand, it was like, we're trusting in God fully and completely to provide. But on the other hand, it is terrifying all the time, right? And it's always made me wonder, and I've talked to them personally, it's always made me wonder, is that an attitude that I can adopt? Even in financial stability, that God, you have the ability to provide as much as I need. You can give me as much financial bread as I need for today to get through. And if things don't go my way financially, you're still going to be there. Anyways, all that to say, thinking about this concepts of that, what does that prompt you guys to think about?
I mean, I think it also brings up that idea of like the rich young ruler, right? Like biblically, the story of it being harder for this rich young ruler to enter the kingdom of God than it is for a needle to get through like for a camel to get through the needle, right? The eye of a needle. I think the difficulty of that is like in some ways, like the more you make, the harder it is to essentially like let go of that monetary value of something. And I think part of that is also because of this idea that we work for money, we trade time for money. Like we were throwing around the that saying of like time is money.
Right.
And I think we sometimes associate. I remember when I started working right at Chipotle, very humbling journey.
Chipotle.
I was working as a grill master.
Grill master. That was your title. That was
It
your
definitely
title, right?
sounded better than it actually was. Definitely being mastered by my boss.
By your grill. Yeah.
Rather than
By the grill.
But at the end of the day, I was the master of the grill.
Yeah.
Which really was just a nice way of saying you just gotta cook everything. And if anything is uncooked, it's on you. So anyways, talk about my experience with the fast food industry another time. But I was making at the time $18 an hour. That was my first job. I was really happy with that because prior to that, I was making zero. And my understanding was that if I went into work for every hour, I would get $17 for every hour I was there. And that concept blew my mind because I was essentially gaining this thing, this paper thing, this object, right, that I was talking about earlier, that could get me a little bit closer to getting the iPod Touch. So for me, I was like working towards that goal, right? Like the hours I was putting in, I was tangibly seeing the money come in at every 2 weeks, and I would like get a little bit closer to that 200. And eventually I'd be able to buy that 200 thing. But anyways, that idea of like trading time for money, I think, I forget where I was going with this, but I think the idea of like having essentially a goal and like chasing after it, I think in some ways like money equipped me with that kind of idea too, to like run and chase for that thing, and like work hard for it.
Yeah. No, and I think that goes into this idea about like the perception of money, right? Like, and it's interesting how your perception of money has, from what you're saying, like has built from that initial discovery of, wait, I could trade my time for money, and I could trade the money for this. Like there's this sort of transactional perspective about money. That wasn't necessarily good or bad. It was just like just understanding it, right?
Right.
But it's interesting how I think our perception of money is also extremely important, kind of to your point, right? And so there was a one other study talking about people's perceptions about their income and how that affected life satisfaction.
Right.
And so people who felt that they had a consistent perspective about their finances and were satisfied where they were, had greater life satisfaction, regardless of income, it looks like. So if they made 30,000, they're a family of 5, and they were satisfied with what that brought, then life satisfaction was there. It makes me think of like oh my gosh, oh my gosh, why am I tripping right now? Scrooge and like little Tim, like their family was like a huge family, but they were, although they didn't have the finances, there was satisfaction and joy that Scrooge didn't have, right? Despite being someone who was more financially well off.
The idea of being rich in different things.
Yes,
right?
exactly.
Like being rich, I think, in money is different than being rich in relationships and things that.
Which is exactly what you were talking about.
Yeah, right. Like things that you can't necessarily buy with money, like friendships, like relationships, like the depth of your like health, even right. I can't pay anyone $10,000 today to give me a 6-pack, right? Like you kind of.
That would be nice.
I think you can like get surgery and whatnot, but it's just there's things that you can't just get in life. I think, but a lot of the times I think the emphasis on money is so great, and maybe arguably a little bit greater than it should be. I do want to touch back, I think, on that idea of you brought up earlier, Josh, of lifestyle inflation. I think I experienced that firsthand after becoming a nurse. I remember back then when I was a child, like I was looking for every deal possible across like in existence when I was buying anything. Like I would wait for the sales. I would just wait. I would penny pinch. I would, do everything I could to essentially get something at the best price. When I started working as a nurse with, a slightly bigger income, I noticed myself like going out to eat and being a little bit less worried about like the price tag that was associated with each item. Instead of going out for a In-N-Out hamburger, I would just go out for a 3x3 and a milkshake and a shake, right? But I noticed that as a result of making more, those decisions that I started to make began to change. And I think part of that is interesting to explore too, because I'm curious to see whether that being a little bit more, spending a little bit more on yourself, I think can sometimes be viewed as like a selfish, like as a bad thing.
Yes.
But I did notice myself also like this idea of starting a generosity fund, of like having a set aside amount that I would dedicate to spending on other people, which I think was a really great thing that I adopted, right? And I did notice myself like being able to treat other people more, like being able to utilize my income to help other people. And so that arguably is a really good thing. So I was kind of just like in between. I'm curious to prompt this to you guys too, of that idea of like making more and like is it how you decide to necessarily kind of spend it that I think is where the importance lies. Because you've also heard like that saying and that cliche saying of like money is the root of all evil, right? So just to throw some of those ideas out to you guys, and like see what we'll get back as well.
I have some thoughts, but I want you to
Yeah,
first.
absolutely. I don't necessarily think it's money is the root of all evil. I think it's the love of money is the root of all evil. If you're going from a biblical standpoint. But if you're just going from like a very worldly thing, then I can see how, yes, money is the root of all evil. But with the sake of the conversation, yeah, I think the way that you utilize money, you were talking, Josh, about, income inflation. And then, of course, what Anthony was chiming in on was just the idea of like, okay, how do people respond to that? Like if you're making a lot more and then you're realizing like, oh, you're spending and you're wondering why the heck is my return not coming in greater in profits? And I'm making a lot more in money now. Well, obviously it's because the way that you're spending your money and then also the way that you have money set aside and how it's working. I think the general idea that I'm trying to get across as a point is I think the more frugal, the more content you are with spending just enough to get by whilst allowing your money to work for you is a really big idea that we have to start to understand in that process. That's where a lot of return and profits come from, a very financial and a practical and a conceptual concept understanding. And what I mean by that is, for example, like if you're going, this is a wonderful example. I don't remember the name of this billionaire, but he is very consistent about going to McDonald's for breakfast every morning. And he'll
That's
get a
hilarious.
specific like meal. But then he realized because of inflation, it went up like 50 cents. He chose to get a smaller sandwich that costed way less. And this guy has billions of dollars now. But you think about how important that decision of consistency every single day, where he understood how the market was running and what changed within the circumstances of time in modern day. And he adjusted to that. And I think we as average, I'm a normal average human being. I'm no greater than anyone else. And I just love Jesus. And my significance through that is, okay, what has Christ given and allowed me to have that I'm able to share and help others understand that they also have? And one very significant quote that right here, Anthony Chow, one of the co-hosts here on this podcast, had helped me see one time was he said, it just understanding. It was this idea that I also chimed in from another friend, but the point is, we have bread. Now help us to share and help others understand where we're getting that bread from. And that bread can either be, of course, that spiritual bread of where we're feeding our spirit, but also that physical bread of like, oh yeah, this is the finances that are adjusting and supporting my specific endeavor. But that's my thought on that. Great question.
I think it goes into like the generosity fund. Like I adopted that, as Anthony well knows. He's benefited from the generosity fund.
Hey, return on investment, right? There you go.
We benefited. You should really start doing this for yourself. I think it'd be really great.
You know, treating your friends is really great.
Treating your friends like
Speaking of, do
is
you
really
want to grab
great.
lunch?
Yeah. We might as well start using that right now. But
let's jump into it.
it's I think an extension of what both of you guys are saying, right? Is like where's your bread coming from and where is it being used, and even as an extension of that shared, right? Is I've explained this idea to people when it comes to talking about finances because I've found that it's been the best way to, in my mind, use money because I tell people the reason I have this, and I think we talked about this when you proposed this initial idea or when you talked about it initially, was like by taking off the financial burden of you going to lunch with me, it is taking down one barrier that could have withheld you from having that conversation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes. Good.
And that's where the finances come into play, is because I'm withholding that. If that was a concern for you, it's no longer a concern.
Oh my gosh.
You know?
I have a story that I want to share real quick after you.
Yeah, no, you share it.
Okay. So this has been on my heart. This has been also the process of reconciling and helping friends see what's so important about what we're talking. You guys understand my current situation about living situation and what a struggle it is to be adulting after post grad and just like, transportation issues, etc. And I think in a very like if I had to take a step back type of perspective, the one encouragement that I have with friends that don't really understand my situation is if you're not understanding where one person might be coming from, I think it's worth a chance to hear them out when they're coming from a very desperate or a low place. When they're saying like, oh, are you able to save $5 from this thing? And I know you're asking because that was a fixed price for a specific thing. But that makes all the difference for me. I'm struggling, I'm breathing, I'm underwater, and it's like almost as if I get it, you don't understand everything, but you're not really considering just the hardship that I'm going through. And it really sucks when you're so down and caught in a valley and someone's like, but this is the role that I'm fulfilling, or this is where I'm coming from because of this. And I understand that, but if we're going to communicate then the maturity of what that looks like, I wouldn't expect something so over an explanation, but just to be explicitly direct and honest, not in a sense where it's like, oh, I have to explain myself because of X, Y, and Z. It's like, if there's going to be something that's holding us back, let's just communicate the directness of that, not allow a sense of because I'm fulfilling a role or X, Y, like more excuses with what I'm saying.
Yeah. Like you don't want to have like fluff, I guess.
Exactly.
And that's I think that's something that I think that's part of our broken nature is that we tend to feel the need to justify our brokenness sometimes. And whether that's financially or spiritually or emotionally and I think it's one of the most difficult things to be broken in front of people, right? And for you to say, I have a desire to be transparent in my brokenness, in my lackings, that's a perspective that there's very little that can stop you with that attitude, right? But that also requires you to be bold and be like, I'm gonna show up like this, and regardless of how it's received. So like, let's say you were going out with me or I was going out with you and I wasn't in a place financially where I could afford to go. It's like, sorry, dude, I can't afford that today. Can we do something else that like meets my limited finances today, more so than being like, I just got a lot of bills this month, it'd be great if we could, or just, trying to be like, oh, I'm spending on this other thing, maybe we could do it. I don't know. Trying to appear more financially stable than you actually are. But yeah.
That's good. I think it's worth also saying, I think a lot of times we spend, and you touched on this, like spend money in a way where the intent may just be to kind of like people please. Or to satisfy other people in like an outward way. And whether that's like buying the next designer thing, as opposed to like, I don't know, going to your thrift store and just dressing humbly, or trying to upgrade and get the newest best car, as opposed to driving your family's broken down Camry, right?
Come on, Camry.
Growing up with that experience, I remember being so embarrassed, driving. And I don't know, my parents listen to every single episode, so they're listening to
Oh wow.
sorry mom, I love you guys. And that I was embarrassed, but I realized I had a car to drive.
Yeah.
I had a car to drive.
Right there.
I have a word.
And that was so much more than a lot of other people even had at that point. And here I was, ungrateful for the thing I was being provided for, not even having to worry about car insurance, talk about adulting. At this point in my life where I realized that where is this desire coming from to want to make this person that's sitting next to me impressed about who I am.
Yeah.
Why do I need the next fanciest car? Why do I need to be wearing, the best, designer clothes?
Yeah.
Or to be, doing the craziest things and going on the most flamboyant vacations of things you see on social media, like traveling and doing all this crazy stuff. And I just had omakase last night and I'm having it for a second time tonight.
Nobu for the fifth time this week.
But I think also social media, which we've touched on countless times in the past, plays such a big role in that. And this idea of wanting just to look a certain way in front of other people, to be perceived a certain way, when I think our attention should be really diverted to something else, someone else, that arguably his opinion is so much more important than anyone else's that we can really think about.
You know what word I would use instead of a shift? I would use the word distort. Because finances, as we've talked about, can be used in ways that are for the kingdom, right? For relationships, for Jesus.
Right.
But I think that social media distorts that narrative for it to be something that maybe could be used as good, but now it's being shifted in a manner that's alternative. But just to kind of shift gears a little bit, kind of going into more in depth on culture and the influences around culture and in regards to finances, right? We live in a culture that, like you said, there's this flaunting and this association with finances as power, as authority, as being better than, right? And living in that culture that we do, that I don't think will go away anytime soon, how do we best navigate that? How do we best navigate that with each other? How do we best navigate that as individuals in the midst of our own brokenness and maybe our financial lackings, according to what social media is saying? You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think part of that culture is, so growing up, I had I don't know if it's 2008, 2013, something like that. Really old Camry, right? It was a black Camry.
Is that the one you have right now?
Edition. No, this is older.
Oh, shoot.
And
I was like, hey,
this thing had tape that was holding the headlights on.
Oh my God.
And with a string attached to it. Talk about being thrifty, right? Talk about being thrifty. And but this thing ran every time you put the key into the engine.
Come on, turn on.
The car reliably started.
Yeah.
Right. And for me, that's really all my dad really cared about. If it starts, then we're good. Yeah. Right. And fast forward to this year, and this ties into the culture I think that I grew up with, and paints it really well, is that this is the first year that this car will no longer pass smog check. And if you don't know what that is, it's essentially this test that your car needs to pass every year in order for it to be even driven legally in the DMV. It's illegal to drive a car that does not pass smog. And that's something that you have to bring your car into and do through a legit mechanic. I will leave the details of how we passed the smog test for the past few years aside for legal reasons. But
come on, DMV, don't come out at us.
Yeah, but anyways, this idea of literally using something until the wheels fall off, or until you can't even use it anymore. Right. I think that's the idea that I grew up with, the financial idea, because growing up, we ate all the food on our plate until it was all gone.
Yeah.
We drove cars till they were run down, till we couldn't even drive it anymore, like legally, right? Like this is the first year my dad like probably has to buy a new car. Like he has to. A lot of people say that they have to do things when they don't really have to, right?
I have to get the new next iPhone. I have to get that.
Right. The newest iPhone just dropped. It says
The newest
September.
iPhone
Yeah.
drops
The iPhone
every
Air.
year.
Yeah, like every year.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that you need the newest best thing, right? But my parents, I think, resemble, and this is where I think I pay respect to them. I think they resemble that so well. That idea of frugality, of just being. I think penny pinchers has a very bad connotation, but being just saving for almost like the quality of my life, like in a sacrificial way.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of
man.
times, like the way you use money is it can either be seen as like a really great way to kind of treat others and to bless others,
Yeah.
or there's this idea of also like scandalously using your money for just things that don't further the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
I think those are the two category buckets that I can really categorize. Like when I think about, should I spend my money to do this? Should I
Yeah.
buy a new microphone, for instance, for
The
the
podcast.
podcasts, right?
Yeah.
Like, is that going to further the kingdom of God or is it not? And I think sometimes might not be a black or white answer, and it might take a time to discern, either 5 years or 5 days. But that decision ultimately is going to result in like either you buying it or not. And I think
Yeah.
that's kind of how I live with my decisions, to go into a more practical approach
Yeah.
of like, are you going to have buyer's remorse, which is
Yeah.
another idea, or are you going to live with that idea that like, hey, we got so much bang out of this, we ran that to the ground,
Yeah.
I'm so happy with that purchase, right?
Yeah.
Like this is going to last me a while and I'm happy with that.
Yeah.
The money I spent.
Yeah.
And that's my psychology with money now, just to plant that in the seed. Like I really believe in buy nice or buy twice. That's a personal thing. I don't mind spending a little bit more if that means that it's going to last me a little bit longer.
Yeah.
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 I have so many words, but I want to give it.
No, I want you to take
Hey,
it.
don't all speak at once, all right? hey,
No, that was so good. I mean, just to kind of reflect before I throw something at David, which I think is going to be really, it's going to be really good.
Little curveball in there.
But no, it's like so good. The mindset of, what was it? What do you say? Buy once,
Buy
or
nice or buy twice.
buy nice or buy twice. It's like it's pushing against like the Forever 21 mentality, where it's like,
or fast fashion,
or
right?
fast fashion, where it's just like,
a
you're
lot
just
of these, yeah.
right, like you're just going through stuff for the sake of going through stuff versus like looking for quality. And I feel like actually that's something that my mom is always actually invested into, is like buying with intentionality can tend to get you way farther than buying with impulsively, right? Or it's just like, I'm just getting to get versus getting with as a choice, But one thing I wanted to prompt into, and this kind of segues into your idea, is the perception of value, right? Right, and I think about that. I might be recollecting this wrong, right? But like when we give of our offerings, I know in church they say it's a lot, is give what the Lord is telling you to give, whether that's 1 penny or that's $500,000, right?
Yeah.
And it's for me, it's like being in places and positions in the past where I have been legitimately poor. I remember still having a desire to give what I had, and that was like $1. But to me, that $1 was a lot.
Yeah.
That $1 meant more to me
Yeah.
than maybe someone else who's making 5 times the amount. Giving $1 feels like a penny.
Yeah.
Right.
But for me, that was $1. That was like a part of my budget that I set out for that, And so, I guess thinking about the ways that we give of our finances, right? Spiritually, relationally, right? Like, one thing I wanna prompt to you, David, is, right, like when you are in a position like now, thinking about being generous, what does that look like for you? Being generous with your finances, whether that's going out to eat with somebody, generous or generous with gifts. Like, what do gifts look like for you?
Yeah.
Within the concept of being in a position that, and I could speak for myself, but like being in a position that giving
Mm.
is hard.
Yeah.
You know, giving is a choice.
The that's a wonderful question, by the way, Josh. I wanted one clarification on you mentioned gifts. Are we talking gifts as in like a present type of gifts
It
thing?
could be that, or it could be your time. You know,
Okay.
or it's like,
Okay, so
or it's
like that?
it's like Anthony talked about. It's like for me, like my dad was like a penny pincher, so his
Yeah.
gifts were really intentional. His gifts were
Got
really
it.
intentional,
Got it.
and I mean, he like wouldn't cheap out or anything,
Uh-huh.
but they would be really intentional because like I want to also get the most bang for my buck, but I also want it to be something that came from a good place. You know, because you can just like, I'm just gonna get you an iPhone. That's a great gift, genuinely.
Wow.
But what if I, like, a lot of times my friends from high school would give me, I think I've shown you them, but like these little stones from Ephesus with scripture inscribed on them.
Oh.
They aren't that expensive, but the sentimental value
Yeah.
is so substantial.
Right.
So stuff like that. Like how are you intentional with the ways that you're generous?
Yeah, really good.
Generous in the midst of this.
Generous. How can I and how am I generous in the midst of my life currently?
I mean, we could talk for us too.
It's really good, absolutely, and how you guys are also doing with your guys' current situation and the generosity of what that looks like. I think for me personally, it looks like I think I'm really big on this. So for one, self-awareness, once again, is really important. So if I recognize that I don't have much to give, and that's in a lot of things, then I want to be able to also pinpoint, then what are the things that I know I can give plentiful of? You know? So my thing is like, and everyone who's close, they know me, like transportation is a bit of a thing that I'm working on right now. I won't get too much in details, but transportation is really hard for me. Just been really slowed down from COVID and trying to get back up on my feet in order to, you know, get things and the ball rolling in that field of transportation for my life. I'm like, okay, I got to do this and that and that. And so that's just one aspect where I'm like, man, I would appreciate it if, you know, you can help me out on that. But I'm willing to give you my full and absolute presence of attention and help and manual labor. Like I will help you, I will assist you, whatever you need. Like, but just get me there. If you can get me there, I appreciate that very much because I can't do that myself. Now the thing is, I think the value is being able to present once again, like how much goodness can I bring from the things that I'm able to bring. And even if I can't bring a lot, I think the best people are the ones who are able to just acknowledge that I'm able to like have something to bring to the table. And that's the thing is like with our brokenness, you know, like there's only so much you can give. And even if that's like, oh, like, you know, this person to be a big wooer, but like, I don't know, maybe something happened where, you know, maybe someone in their family that was close to them passed away and they're just feeling really down in a slump. They're not too much of a wooer now for a season. But that doesn't mean that they can't, you know, continue to still give that sense of zeal and enthusiasm and love and care and affection to you and your friendship. But it might be a lot more down in level, but they're still present as much as they can. And I think just even knowing that as your friend, like, oh man, I see you're really down in a slump. I don't even think it's about what the wooer can provide, but what you can receive from that experience. Oh, my friend's down in a slump. I want to be there to support them. And I think the value is more to the wooer and then also the person, the other person in this situation.
But even think about that too. To jump on that is like, how much more substantial is that person in grieving when they continue to give? Like how much more valuable that is, because it's like you are struggling, yet you are giving. And I think this goes into an idea that I really want to propel this direction, right? Is like, how do we know when to ask for help? Right? So as you're talking about this idea of you recognize your need, and maybe that's rooted in financial or just whatever, right? Like that's something that I feel like in circumstances of the past, when Anthony and I have had seasons, speaking of financially, that were rougher, it's like there were plenty of seasons or plenty of moments when I felt like not that you were asking for help or I was asking for help, but there was like several moments where
I was definitely asking for help.
Well, sure.
The silent cry.
I was gonna let you say that, not me. But I feel like I feel like I admired Anthony a lot in that season because he was willing to say, yeah, my finances are really hard right now. Or I really don't know how God's going to provide in this, but I'm really hoping that he will. And I'm really leaning into how he will, right? And I felt like for me as your friend, kind of to your point, right? Like I was able to value and respect our friendship that much more because you made the space to be like, this is like, I don't know how this is going to work. And I was
Yeah.
like, dude, what can we do? And I remember for a season of time, I had you over for dinner.
Dude, that was
Like
that. It was
for
that
like
bad. Yeah.
for like days and days and
Yeah.
days for weeks and weeks. And I would say, hey, let's go something. Oh, I got you. No problem. Let's do it.
Yeah.
And but it was because you were
My heart.
but it was because, and I don't mean that in any boastful way, but
Yeah.
it was because I was in the season of life that with my finances I was able to lean in that way, but it was also because you made the space to allow me to lean into. You said, here's my vulnerability, and let me like, and you may not have said I need help, but I saw it as an opportunity to lean in and say, where can I meet you in your gaps? You know?
Oh, that's so.
And that was a great season. I loved that season.
It was a rough season.
That was a rough
But
season.
I think the rough patches make it all the greater.
Yeah.
I think, I mean, just to edify you for a moment, I don't probably do this enough, but thank you for all that. Just the entirety of that season was such an impactful, I think, moment in my life. Um, I think just to paint the picture a little bit more, I was living actually on food stamps at the time.
I remember that.
So I think for anyone that's listening, I kind of have an understanding of what it looks like to be pulling your CalFresh card out at a grocery store and worrying about what the people behind you in line are really thinking about you. Whether they're judging you for what you're pulling out of your wallet or they're looking at you, buy mounds and mounds of rice cakes because they're still trying to pursue your dream of being a bodybuilder. Meanwhile, being thrifty with your finances and utilizing the resources that you can, right? Like that's what it means to go after something like 100% without holding back.
Yeah. That was crazy.
And it doesn't matter. I think in your situation, I remember in my time, living on food stamps, of being thrifty with what I bought. I remember reflecting at night, and I was doing these journaling sessions with just time with me and God, right? At the end of my day, just kind of debriefing, unloading, unpacking, downloading everything that had happened that day into my notebook so that I can, review that later on in life and, see how God has really worked in the past. And I remember reflecting on that moment of like realizing that like, wow, like, yeah, Josh has been such a blessing to me. I think I realized like, wow, he like invited me for dinner, I think more than once this week. And then I dawned on the fact that like, dude, we were going to, we had such, I remember that time being so fun. I think we were just going to like Victoria Gardens.
Oh yeah, that was so good.
We went to the beach one night. We went to like Disneyland a few times.
Wow.
Yeah. So fun.
And I reflected on all those experiences, and I was like, I think Josh drove all of those times. And I just paused to reflect. Also, I was like, I can't even imagine how much this guy's spending on gas, right? And for a second, I was just like stopped dead in my tracks, and I was just like, wow, like
it was a good time.
I think a lot of times the way that other people give maybe go under the radar, like we don't even see that, especially those things that even aren't monetary, like the way they spend their time. But even those little like minuscule things like gas or someone just like paying for the bill for like, for food, or inviting you over for dinner, because then that subtracts from your total grocery bill, but then you don't really see that money going out of their budget because they put that money in like to the grocery bill that they spent or maybe set aside in intention to treat other people in their lives that aren't doing as financially well. You don't see that.
Yeah.
And I think there's so much beauty in the intentionality of that, and I think we often miss that. I think those little things, those little moments that I think we ought to be so much more grateful than we really are for.
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, and it comes at no boast for me, because I felt like at the time that was something that my family, especially like you've met my extended family with the
Yes.
food,
Yes.
right? Like
Yes.
that's just a response.
Yeah.
That's just an instinct of like, we are so glad you're here. Here's way too much food for you to eat for the next 10 days, but we're gonna give it to you all in one day.
Way too much.
And right? You know what I'm talking about though. So my family my family loves through the generosity of food. And
food is their love language.
food is a love language,
basically.
but it's also the way that they show generosity and show care.
Yes.
If you want to check that just in case. But I do feel like the importance of generosity when it comes to in general, I think that Jesus calls us to serve.
Right.
And even serve like instinctually.
Yeah.
Right? Where it's like there's been it's really interesting. There's a professor that I had in at APU. His name was Professor Givens. He actually passed away from an accident. And the last class, we were actually his last class that he had at APU.
Wow.
He taught there for over 35 years. We were the last class he had. The last class that we had with him, he basically left us with a sort of pass it along message, which I think is so sad as much as it is fitting.
Right.
And what that meant on a practical standpoint was he gave us a bunch of bags with like food and water, and this said, pass this along. Not only pass this one bag along, but make more of these. Right. So that when you see someone who's in need, your instinct isn't to go past them, it's to stop and give. Stop and give. If it's food that you are not liking, put it in the bag. Make it a part of your bundle. And when you see someone in need, give. Like, give what you can. If that's a hello, there was one time when I was, the Target in Azusa?
Yes.
And I don't say the story in any way of being boastful or trying to shed light on an act that I did for the Lord. But there was a woman who was sitting and I was in the Target. I was going to get some other stuff. And I saw that she was crying on the ground with like a shopping cart, and I went up to her and I said, people were walking past her and stuff like that, and I just felt like this pull to go and speak with her. I was like, I need to speak to this person. Like, she's clearly struggling. And I went up to her and I said, hey, I know this is really random, but I just wanted to check in with you. And she like looked at me like all confused, like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I was like, I just see that you're just not, doesn't look like you're doing too great. Like, what's going on? What's your name? And she told me her name, and she told me that she had fractured her hip but couldn't afford the surgery and didn't want to have to go through it. And I just said, I'm really sorry to hear about that. And I'm here for you. Can I go get you something? I know it's really hot right now. No, you're good. Bless you. And before she even like told me what she wanted, she just looked at me. She said, thank you for stopping and like noticing me. And I was like absolutely. And it's interesting how something so maybe insignificant in my mind, because I have people who notice me all the time, was so invaluable to her because that's something that is a rare commodity given her circumstances, And so I, went into Target and got her some food and some water and some pain medication because she was in a lot of pain. And I gave it to her, and she just said, I'm really thankful you came by. And I was like, I am really thankful that you received me.
Yeah.
And I remember I said, like, can I do anything for you? And she's like, there's not really much you could do. And I was like, I understand. And I said, I hope this helps you. And I offered to pray for her. And she's like, no. I'm like, totally understandable. But I walked away from that interaction affirmed over the fact, not that because I didn't gain anything from it.
Yeah.
No one was a witness of it, but there was an affirmation in the fact that she got something from it.
Yeah.
And she benefited from it in ways that I in my own life can't perceive.
Right.
So I don't know, in terms of what we're doing, just kind of to get to sort of a summarization point.
Yeah, I think
Um,
as we kind of close off, I think I do have the final question. I just
yeah.
wonder, I know this is only part 1 of 2, so we also have a little bit more space and capacity to talk about this further in a deeper level in the next one. But just to probe this last question over to you guys, what are some practical ways that you guys live a life where you feel like is in touch with the way the Bible tells you to spend money, and the way you actually are living your life in a way that is in line with that? If you need a few seconds, that's cool too.
Yeah.
I'll say this. There's always a gap. I think that we have to be cognizant of the fact that there is always a gap of the ways that we treat our finances versus the ways that we want and desire that God desires for us to treat our finances versus how we actually are currently. But I think a perspective of generosity, I think is really crucial, where, and kind of like David talked about earlier on, is that finances are a means to relationship, not a means from.
Yeah.
Or not a means away from.
Yeah.
Right. I think the enemy desires to isolate us, and he has a lot of tools to do that.
Yeah.
And money is just but one of them.
Right.
And so recognizing that finances can be great, they can be a gift, they can be a means to bringing people together, but they can just as well be the opposite.
Right.
And so I think that's my desire in terms of my perspective.
Yeah.
It's a really good insight, Josh.
Yeah.
So you were saying practical.
Practical.
I would say cognizant, self-aware, similar meanings, but just having an open mind about where you're spending your money. I think just having that consistent reminder of what's in it for me, and is it really worth it for me to spend, on this specific item or this specific event or concert or time. And really, really just considering what that effect of spending that would have on your life. That would just be more the practical. So, if I know I really needed food more than a specific, rock climbing gear, even though there's a really good deal on that rock climbing gear, then I would, spend money on food because that's more important. The necessity needs to be met.
Talking about backpacking is way more important than food. Just kidding.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
No, you're so good. That was a good one, but no.
That's good.
I love the idea that I think it's more important to see another day so that I have potentially the chance to see more of rock climbing and backpacking adventures rather than me fulfill the need and nature of backpacking adventure, but not even know if I will survive to see another day.
You live every day like your last?
That's a huge phrase. I don't know if I live. I don't live if I live that.
We'll unpack that next episode.
Right. Yeah.
Next episode.
Really good. But
and
yes,
what that
you want
looks
to finish it
To
up.
live every day like your last. I think my closing thought here before I guess I'll just press out too, is to see money, I think, as a tool, and rather than a end, I think it's a means to an end. I think for me, the story of my upbringing of driving a car that was really worn down but still got me to point A, point B, is oftentimes I think all that I really need. And I think part of that is just knowing that how I can use my money to serve other people. As that shift kind of moves from a place where I can provide for my own needs and now how I can provide for other people's needs through that. And I think that mindset shift to always remind myself that money is always a tool. And to, I love the saying of love people and use money because the opposite never works.
Gee.
And I actually stole that from another podcast.
Oh, you should have.
Called the no, I gotta give credit where it's due. Yeah. They're called the minimalists, and they believe in just doing things at a minimal level. But yeah, I think that is gonna be the end of our episode. Why don't we just call it and I'll pray us out.
Sounds good.
Come on.
Father God, thank you for just this beautiful day that we get to join together in conversation and love for you as a fellowship of brothers and everyone else here that's watching. I just pray that they were able to just gain so much from this conversation as much as we have. Thank you for this place, this moment, just this space that we all get to chime in and have a conversation about the things that pertain to our current lives and the things that are important that deal with how we are to live the good life on a deeper level, and how we are to reflect that as a reflection of you. Ultimately, thank you for the finances that we have and the finances that we're able to bless other people with. Thank you for our current situations, whether we're making enough or making not enough. I just pray that we still glorify you at the end of the day, that we still love and care and have compassion and love to all the other people around us, which is very free to do. And yeah, thank you for just money. Thank you that we can see it as a way to help others, as a tool, not necessarily as an end, but as a mean to an end. And give all these prayers up to you, God. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
All right, you guys, that's going to be episode 12. Thank you for joining us today. Always such a great time to have conversations like this. Like, comment, subscribe, and we will join you in the next one. We're going to be talking about finances again in part 2. So good to see you guys, and see you guys in the next one. Woo!